Things, comrade. We are renaming Empire Cookie to Proletariat Cookie. But actually, I just want to give some insight on history in a different way. Like, not how we're taught in the public school system, which is totally a warped history, because when you actually know the full picture, it's like, oh, now I get it. Oh, now it actually makes sense to me, because before it never actually made sense. And one of the biggest things that I learned on my own journey in this is that it was actually the Soviet Union that won World War II. That, to me, this happened several years ago, but poof, it was a big revelation. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole element that has been completely erased from history. You know, it's really spelled out well in Oliver Stone's History of the United States, which highlights how the Soviet Union was taking on hundreds of divisions of Nazi battalions or units, while the collective West was taking on like a dozen at the same time. So, like, you know, it's an insane mental picture, and how it was through huge amounts of sacrifices on the part of the Red Army. This is the Soviet Union's army, that we have the world that we have. It was won off the backs of the Soviet Union. And when a world power, there's a saying that when a world power sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. You know, we can kind of think of powerful countries or states as the sun, and other states orbit around it. Or we can kind of see another way of things leach out based off of the superpower of the day. So we know that the Soviet Union was a superpower, and we know that the worker state had more rights and freedoms than we do today. How immediately, this was over 100 years ago, women were immediately declared equal citizens. Homosexuality was legalized, and abortion was legalized. Okay, that's actually better off than America is today, because they had the Roe versus Wade overturned. Women were allowed to take off time for menstruating. They were paid to take time off at work. If you wanted to become a doctor and you were poor, you could do that. It was covered. It was covered in the socialized education system. If you had a rare medical condition, you didn't have to worry. It would have been treated. So this is all the amazing developments that happened as a result of the first worker state. It was, again, made possible by the workers, by the people that constituted the state, the proletariat, the working class. And, you know, when the Soviet Union sneezed, which it sneezed a lot, the whole world caught their cold, which was civil rights, civil liberties. So that's why when the Soviet Union immediately took over, that's when we saw a huge push for women's rights, for minority groups. It happened as a direct consequence of the Soviet Union's victory. And it also happened sort of as a concession to prevent socialist takeover, so that people would, so there was sort of like, it was sort of like the bourgeoisie were saying, here, have some rights, so that the workers won't completely take over. That's what concessionary means, and that happened on the backs of the Soviet Union. So it's so cool that when you actually know what happened in history, like, poof, the light bulbs just go off, and knowledge is a beautiful thing.